Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're attending from today. As always, before we kick off an open forum, we'd like to just do a quick sound check to make sure you can hear us, see the slides, see us on webcam, and make sure we're coming through loud and clear. So if you can just let us know in the chat before we officially kick off, that would be great. Awesome. So great. Thanks for joining us for this latest WSI digital marketing webinar, which is entitled Expert Tips to Improve Your E-commerce Website Experience. My name is Cheryl Baldwin. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at WSI's corporate head office located in Toronto, Canada, and I have the pleasure of being your host today. Now, before we officially kick off and get started, I just want to make sure that we go through a couple housekeeping items. So everyone is muted, but that doesn't mean that you can't be asking questions along the way. So make sure that you use the question box to submit any questions that you have as our presenter is presenting. We're going to be handling a Q&A session at the end. Our presentation will be running about 30-35 minutes, so we have a good amount of time, around 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. So submit those. Also, yes, we get this question a lot. Our webinar is being recorded, and we will be sending out the recording as well as a copy of all the slides, a copy of the slide deck after the webinar so that you have those available to you. And again, we have a lot of people joining us from all over the world today. And so if you run into any issues with regards to audio or visual, sometimes some best recommendations are just to jump off and jump back on again, or even flipping back and forth between computer audio and your telephone audio. So before we officially get into introducing the presenter, I just wanted to give a quick kind of roundabout of who WSI is and who we are and what we do. I mean, WSI has been around for 25 years now. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. And during that time, we've helped literally hundreds of thousands of businesses with their digital marketing strategies. We know digital marketing can be complex, and so our goal is to help businesses navigate that complexity. And one of the ways in which we do that is actually doing webinars like this, educating the business community on specific digital marketing topics that you can implement in your business. And so our session today is focusing on a very prevalent strategy in digital right now. I mean, it was growing ahead of COVID, but with everything that's happening and having people move businesses even more online and more shopping happening online, the concept of e-commerce is bigger than it ever has been. And so we really wanted to make sure we were delivering you some best practices around that. Our presenter today, John Leach, will be sharing some expert tips to help you improve specifically your e-commerce website experience. And so regardless of where you are in your journey, maybe you're just putting pen to paper and getting started, or maybe you have been selling online for years now, we feel like you're going to definitely take something away, some actionable insights here with the expert tips that John will be sharing. And so let's officially introduce you to our presenter today, John Leach. Now, John has been with WSI since 2016. He operates his business out of Ireland. But previous to that, John was the European e-commerce director for Lenovo, and actually built their e-commerce capability from 0 to 14 countries. And this actually gives him a very unique perspective. He's not only a digital marketing consultant that helps businesses with their strategies, but he's a previous e-commerce business owner himself. And so I think the perfect presenter for us today to share e-commerce website tips. So without more ado, I'm going to hand it over to John to take us through today's presentation. John.
Hey, thank you very much, Cheryl, for that nice introduction. And good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everybody. And you're very welcome to today's webinar, talking, as Cheryl said, around your e-commerce design experience and how to improve it. This is a topic I've been engaged with probably all my career and goes back to the mid-90s when I worked as an e-business consultant and evangelist with IBM. And the thing I remember back from that time, we were starting off in those days trying to convince business people that someday in the future they might have an email address on their business card, not a fax number. And on more than one occasion, I sat across the desk from a business person who told me, this web thing will never catch on. Well, 20 years later, and particularly in the middle of our current difficult circumstances with the global pandemic, the world certainly has changed, and changed very dramatically. And thankfully, many of the things we talked about back then, from an e-com perspective, have actually come to pass. So one word of confession for me, I am not a designer, but I've had the privilege of working with lots of great designers and had more than my share of arguments with them as we designed e-com experiences for both small clients and larger companies. So my approach to this subject is very much customer centric. So I tend to approach it by thinking about how do I allow my visitor who's coming to my online store get the job that they want to do done efficiently, quickly, and easily. And that can be checking on orders as well as the shopping and buying process up front. So I really come to it from that perspective, and that's part of what we'll layer through the conversation today. Now, there aren't many absolute rules in this space. There are a number of obviously very good principles and practices that you need to follow. But I want to do two things in the 30 minutes that we have together. And that is to give you a framework on how to approach your e-commerce experience, to give you the right questions, as you look at each step of the journey, because I consider this to be a three-step journey of learn, shop, and buy. And if you have the right questions and you look at each stage of that journey correctly, you start with the right end process or the right end goal in mind, and it helps you, frame your priorities correctly in terms of what you want to achieve. And then we will, of course, highlight some key sort of hints, tips, and things that you need to do to give you the best chance of success with your online experience. So we're not going to, in the time that we have, we're not going to go into some, bit more advanced topics like deep personalization, or there's a lot of exciting things happening with headless e-commerce and shoppable experiences and buy buttons on social, etc. Because I really believe that if we look at some of these basic fundamentals first, and for most businesses, if they double down and do these effectively, they're on the right road, and that's where they will get the most benefit. So our agenda really is to look at, what I describe as the Learn, Shop, Buy framework. We will look at the anatomy of some of your key pages. We will certainly look in a little bit more detail about checkout and cart abandonment, a little bit about analytics at the end to help you prioritize where you want to go focus your efforts in terms of improvements, and then some closing thoughts, and then, as Cheryl said, that we'll finish with some Q&A. Okay, so let's get into the meat of the topic. So unless you've been living under a stone or completely off the grid, it's no secret, as Cheryl had mentioned, that e-commerce has been growing quite significantly over the last number of years and expected to continue to grow. And I guess what's happened this year is, with lockdowns and COVID-19 and the global pandemic, and basically the closing down of retail in many countries for a period of time, that transformation has simply been accelerated. But we do need to remember that last year, only about 15% of retail commerce happened online. So we still live in a multi-channel, multi-environment sort of world. And the conversation I've had with many clients is, if 15% of the market has already moved online, then you as a retailer or business person, if you're not already using online to drive 15% of your business, and that's only a small part of it, then you're missing out where the market has gone, and you need to consider seriously moving into this space. And I think this shift to online shopping is certainly going to be permanent. And the reason for that is two reasons, really. One is, our limitations around our in-store shopping environment with social distancing, etc., is going to be with us for a while, I'm afraid. Certainly through the end of this year, and some commentators would suggest into 2022. So that's going to make that environment challenging for both consumers and indeed retailers. But the other thing is, we do have some experience. The world has been here before, and the SARS outbreak at the start of the century, that's the 2000s, in Asia and China, certainly has accelerated, particularly China's growth of e-commerce and indeed mobile commerce. So we can see that where AP and China lead the world in terms of e-commerce penetration, and I think that's the direction that the rest of us are now being accelerated towards. But Ella, if you move to the next slide, there's nothing, even though some people are afraid about moving to that online environment, you as business people, as retailers, already know how to be successful as retailers. And many of the same basic principles still apply. I mean, my very first sales job many years ago, when I had certainly more hair than I have now, was as selling vegetables door to door in the local town here. And the reasons we were successful at that time, you know, were about the quality of the product, the price, the convenience, the reliability of the service. So these basic principles still apply. And what we have to do is think about transforming those or bringing them to our online experience. So first and foremost, you still have to be competitive online. It's either unique products, your product selection, your price, your service. Now, price is obviously a difficult one. You don't have to be the cheapest, but you have to be competitive. And by the way, 65% of consumers would say that they've already done an online price check while they're standing in your physical store. So you're already competing with online prices, you know, whether you like it or not. The other mistake people sometimes make is they don't focus on the entire experience. They spend all their energy on the site design or wherever. The customer will judge you on the entire experience. So if your logistics provider, your courier, you know, screws up on the delivery or throws it over the wall and breaks it or wherever, you're going to get the blame. So you got to consider your entire experience: customer service, responsiveness, logistics partners, as well as your site design. And then critically, you have to make life easy for the customer, because your competition is now simply one click, one touch on the back arrow away. You no longer have a captive audience if you're the only game in a geographic area or wherever. That no longer applies. And that's why things like site search and navigation, providing contact details, all of those things are really, really important. And we'll look at those in more detail as we go through the presentation. And finally, quality content is your sales assistant. We all know the retail experience, you know, where you had a really good sales assistant who was knowledgeable in the products and the subject, was able to help you with good advice, show you the options, and help you choose the right product for your needs. Well, you know, guess what? The only way to do that online is with really good content, images, descriptions, videos, etc. They are your new sales assistant, and you can't compromise those. You have to focus on it. And then finally, trust is the basis of all commerce. You have to earn it. You know, you do have to look professional online. You do have to have the right security in place. All of those things, because without it, no commerce occurs. So with that in mind, let's walk into what my sort of framework, or how I approach an e-commerce design experience or an e-commerce experience each of the times. So a bit like, if people are familiar with possibly the marketing funnel, where we talk about awareness, consideration, conversion, etc. This is similar in that I think it's more about, you know, learning, shopping, and buying. So in the learn process, you know, the customer, if they're looking for a product or wherever, and they land on your e-com store, you know, the first thing that they're going to try and answer themselves, is this the right store? Does it look like the type of store that will have the right product for me, or the right solutions to what I'm looking for? And is it the type of business that I'm comfortable doing business with? And, you know, it's no different from the real world. You know, you look at the meat shop on the top right hand of the slide, you know, I'm not going to go in there thinking or expecting to find good quality, fresh meat ready for me to purchase. I'm simply not even going to go in there, because, you know, the look of it tells me that's not going to happen. So once you settle the customer in terms of, you know, you're credible, you have content, you have the possibility of providing the products and needs that they're looking for, you then get into the shopping process. And for me, this is all about, can I find the right product? What options are there? Can I compare products? Can you, as an online retailer, help me choose correctly? And how easily that is to achieve. Because that's really the essence of navigating the customer through your catalog, through your site, to the point where they found the right product and they put it in the shopping cart, and now they're ready to buy. And again, like the real world, if I'm standing in the supermarket or standing in a store, product in my cart ready to go, and I look up and there's a 20-minute, you know, queue at the checkout because only 1 out of the 6 lanes are open, then I'm not going to be very happy. Likely going to drop the cart, go somewhere else or wherever. Same online. Once you have it in the cart, can I buy it easily? Can I pay for it? Can I use the payment method I want to use? And there are multiple of those. We'll look at some detail later. And how will you get it to me? Are the shipping options good? So at each step of the way, in the learn process, we're talking about the home pages, your about us pages, why buy from us. That type of content is important. In the shopping phase, it's product categories, it's product pages. What do they need to look like? And then finally, when you get to the checkout and cart pages, that's the final consummation of the sale that you need to get right. And I would generally say that, you know, beautiful is nice, but not necessarily essential. All All the better if you can make it look well. But my touch point for this is the old Ryanair website, which many years ago didn't look very pretty, but it was still one of the top revenue grossing websites in Europe for the simple reason of the product offering the functionality that it had and it offered to the market. More important sometimes is the focus on simplicity, on clarity and functionality. That to me is always essential in the shopping experience, but a little bit harder to do. And the other thing that we need to consider, what makes our job that little bit more difficult, is that we have to be quick. So page load times for e-commerce sites, the top ranking sites, the average page load time is 1.9 seconds. So our expectation is for speed. And if your site is taking 3 seconds and beyond to load its pages, you can measure how much your conversion rate drops for every second of page load time that it takes beyond 1 to 2 seconds. So you really need to focus on speed. Okay, so let's go into some detail around the pages and that experience. So naturally enough, the first page that most people hit in an e-com experience is the home page. And as I said, the most important question for that page to answer is, am I in the right place? It's your opportunity to tell your customers who you are, what your differentiation is, and you have to try and establish trust. There are 3 big things you're trying to do with your homepage. Now, that will vary depending on your demographic, it'll vary depending on your market, etc. So 2 examples I've used here is, the top one is Screwfix. This is a site that sells hardware items to professionals, to builders, plumbers, electricians, DIY enthusiasts, etc. So if I'm looking for a box of 2-inch screws, I want to know that I can get them. I want to know they're a good price. I want to know they're the right quality. So it's a very net, very gritty sort of experience. So Screwfix does a pretty decent job at delivering that. On the other hand, Bon Bon Blossom was actually a site I came across while putting this presentation together. These are sort of quirky, funky, different chocolates. And so there's quite a different feel to that site. And they try to expose, the people behind it, the brand, and get people more engaged with it. And for that demographic, for that market, for what they're trying to achieve, that's probably a good approach. So the left-hand side sort of shows you sort of the wireframe elements that I consider to be quite important in your homepage design. And we'll look at them in detail as we go through the next couple of charts. But a couple of general things is a rich homepage and a long scroll page is fine, because again, that's what we're educated to expect. We've gone beyond, because of our use of mobile and tablets over the last number of years, we're quite comfortable scrolling through a long page, so long as each element is there for a reason and it makes sense and it helps the customer, continue on their journey. So it doesn't always have to be about products. You can certainly should be including things like social proof, testimonial type content, but also, how to or other educational content around the particular product that you offer is very good to get customers engaged and to build your credibility as somebody who knows what you're talking about and somebody who's going to help them, which is key to converting that customer on your site. Okay, Al, if we could move to the next slide, please. So let's look at header and footer as 2 elements in the home page just for a start. And the home page is the first page. The first part of the home page that the customer tends to consume is obviously the header. And again, this is all about, am I in the right place? I think it's more actually, am I in the right place, plus some critical things that I can do to help the customer. So just using Zappos as an example, they obviously make customer service. That's part of their brand, part of how they built their success. So very clearly, you can see customer service. You can see the phone number, top of the left as a really important part of the header. Now, that's true for every site, not just people who make a virtue of service. The number 1 trust signal for subconsciously for people is still proven to be actually a physical phone number. Because subconsciously I'm thinking about, well, at least if I get into trouble either in the shopping process or afterwards, or the product doesn't work, I have a phone number, I can pick up the phone, call the business, and hopefully get some resolution of my issue or my problem. So very fundamental to helping establish trust, which in turn helps your conversion rate, is a physical phone number in the header. And the other part that many sites miss out is actually the importance of search and a really good search experience. Again, over 50% of e-commerce traffic in the US, for example, comes from the top 10 sites. And of course, the big animal, in a lot of that traffic is Amazon, other marketplaces like eBay and and various other marketplaces by country, all have a really good search function. So we've been conditioned to use search to find products and sites. You know, you never navigate through the product navigation in Amazon to find what you're looking for. You go straight to the search box, you type in what you're looking for, and you expect to get back a well curated 3 to 6, 10 items or wherever that fit what you're looking for. So if you're not managing that, and there are a number of apps as well or services that help the merchandising and cleaning up of that search experience, but you really need to deliver a good search experience on a store that has a large catalog. Slightly different for niche products or brand sites that have a very small catalog, then it's probably less important. But for a general retailer, good search is key. And the other thing I'd always include is obviously shopping cart, because thinking about it, if the customer's, you know, in your store looking for stuff, if they've already selected 2 or 3 products and they decide they want to check out and buy what they have, make that easy for them, have it there in the header, because the header will follow. And, you know, these are the essential elements. You can then add other stuff like live chat, taglines, other key messages in your header. But I think the first 3 are really key: phone number, search box, and shopping cart. Let's move to the footer slide, Ella, please. The other end of the page is obviously the footer. And again, I generally like to think here that this is your opportunity to help build more trust signals into your homepage. So certifications, security, shipping methods, payment methods. You know, but by showing a good range of these sort of things in your footer, you're demonstrating that you're a professional organization, you've got good partnerships, you're more than either a fly-by-night or as, you know, you may be a small mom and pop store, but you're actually giving the appearance that you're bigger than that. Other key elements of the footer is, again, double down on contact details. That'd be phone numbers, that'd be email addresses. Help the navigation again, because again, the footer travels on many pages, so you give people an opportunity to navigate back or forth through your site if you need to. And then generally speaking, most people expect to find links to the social channels in the footer as well. So it's very useful to do what people expect you to do, and to follow, you know, the general rule of what most of the successful e-com stores do. Okay, so that's the header and the footer. When you get into the middle and the meat of the main body of the homepage, there are various elements, and these can be rearranged differently. But for me, there's a couple of things that help here. I'm just using eBags as an example. You know, up at the top, they've got a hero image. They've got some headline content that's obviously pretty engaging in terms of the sale. Obviously, you won't always have a sale going on, hopefully. But what I think they do really well here, and we'll show it particularly in the mobile version in a second, is the image, the category image navigation, which is a really important part of helping direct traffic to the key product categories that you want them to engage with, or indeed best selling products, key featured products, you know, some of those other subsets, because generally the 80-20 rule applies. So, you know, a small percentage of your product set will drive the majority of both your revenue and your margin. So part of the job here is to try and navigate people to those products as quickly and as easily as possible. Now, another thing that we see, and they use here, are carousels and animation on the home page. You're trying to cram in more than fits on one page. We work with many partners in our network, and SiteTuner has been one of the very good ones around site conversion. And they would tell you carousels, which is very popular on lots of sites, actually impact very poorly on your conversion rate, can reduce it by up to 18%. So the message there would be very careful about additional navigation of carousels, because they can be distracting to the customer, and, you know, use them with caution, because it can impact your conversion rate significantly. Let's move to the next slide, please. So again, what I like about this is how it transforms to the mobile version, because it's a mistake that we make very frequently, is that we design our experience for the desktop, for a laptop, and don't spend enough time thinking about how it performs on mobile. And the reason that's increasingly important is that, you know, already, you know, mobile is probably 50% or more of the e-commerce traffic, certainly in the consumer space. And, you know, by next year, they're expecting, you know, that could get up into the 70s in terms of percentage of traffic. Now, 2 to 3 years ago, mobile traffic was a big percentage of the traffic, but the conversion rate was really poor. But as phones have got faster, site experiences have improved, and people now trust doing commerce on phones more so than they did maybe even 18 months or 2 years ago. That's the direction that people are going in. So the impact that has on our design thinking is, you really need to design for mobile first, and that drives a certain degree of simplicity, and means that you got to focus on larger and more visual elements, and that makes that so much easier. So if you look at that category navigation on the right hand side, on the mobile version of the website, it stands out really clearly, really easily, so I can still find those categories. I'm not pinching and zooming and trying to find small text or small buttons to click on to get to my next category. So that's really, really important, and I really like how they do that. Let's move to the next slide, Al, please. So once you've sort of at least got the visitor engaged, with your site, they've come onto your homepage, they feel comfortable with what you're offering them, they've moved into either a category or a product page. Now you got to think slightly differently in terms of what you're trying to do. So in this case, this is McGurk's Golf. I'm a golfer. Well, I like to think I'm a golfer in my spare time. And what they do really well here, and you see it on many stores, is the ability to filter your product catalog by multiple different filters. So whatever version of faceted or dynamic search that you use, it really is a critical element of your catalog and category page. Because very quickly I can come on here, select, male or female, XL size, type of clothing. So maybe it's rainwear. I live in Ireland, so rainwear is very important. And I very quickly get from several thousand products down to the top 10 that I'm really interested in. So a good experience, really sharp, really fast. And now I'm thinking about what I'm going to purchase, the price ranges, all of that sort of stuff. So a couple of other things to consider here is, we do tend to make decisions based on comparisons. So, you need to help, if you can help, comparing different products. If you can explain, sometimes we look at products on a site and there's quite a difference in price, and it's very hard to understand why that difference in price is. Well, every time you make a customer stop and think, you run the risk of losing them. You need to keep them moving in the flow. They don't want to tax their brain power. So if you can explain those differences, explain those comparisons in whatever way that you can, again, it makes a big difference to your conversion rate. And the other thing that we spent a lot of time, particularly in my time in Lenovo, was focused on configure to order or other selectors or customization options. Simply because we found when a customer spends time configuring their own product, and sometimes that's only picking colors, maybe even putting a name on the back of it, maybe adding decals or other things to the offering. If they invest time in selecting that product, well, then they feel more committed to it. They feel more, and they do feel in control of the experience, which is the important part. And that drove significant improvements in our conversion rate, but it also meant that our average order value was significantly higher, up to 50% higher in some cases. So if you can do that, if you can engage the customer that way at this point in the process, it's really, really helpful. Let's move on to the next slide, Al, please. So finally, you get them to a product page. And there are really 7 things to consider in your product page. And I like the example I use here of Bellride.com, and there's certain things that I like about this. First and foremost, good quality image. Can't say it often enough. The quality of your images and the more the merrier generally, as long as it doesn't impact page performance, really important to your experience. And increasingly now incorporating video in the mix is important. Because again, we'll talk about why that's important from a conversion point of view in a second. The other thing I like about this page, particularly when you look at the mobile version, is the descriptions are really clear. And in order to help you do that, they need to be headlines, they should be bulleted, they need to be clear and simple. And they've done a really good job on that. A clear add to cart above the fold, and you can add multiples. It doesn't cause you any harm. And by the way, above the fold is no longer, the top half of a page on desktop. Above the fold now is where your mobile traffic, how much or how far down 50% of your visitors scroll on mobile. That's the new above the fold. And to know that, you probably need to use things like heat map software, etc., of which there are plenty of options. And then also embedded in this product page are social proof. The unique selling points are mentioned 2 and 3 times, warranties and returns. So all good elements to your product page, because you're trying to really convince the customer that this is the right product for them. Can we go to the next slide? So video, we've been talking about this all across the marketing, digital environment, if you like. Video is really, really important. And this is true in e-commerce, and increasingly so in e-commerce. Wasn't the case maybe some time back. And it's just the statistics tell us that 90% of consumers say product videos help them make purchasing decisions, and people are quite happy watching product videos. Glory Cycle is the example I'm using here, and what they've done is, another element of this product page I would probably change around a bit, but what I really like is the 8 to 10 minute product review video that they've included in the product page, because this is a $6,000 e-bike. So if I'm going to buy a $6,000 e-bike, well then, I'm probably going to be happy enough to invest 5 to 10 minutes of my time understanding all about that product and really listening to somebody who knows about it and explain it to me. And you can include videos all over your e-commerce experience, in your About Us page, in your Why Buy From Us page, and you can include different types, testimonials, reviews, and like unboxing is one of the hugely searched terms on YouTube, and particularly for consumer electronics and those sort of products, really popular type of video. And if you can incorporate that into your experience, it generally helps your conversion rates. And I like the quote from Ezra Firestone in his Digital Marketeer content, when he says that shoppers who view a product video are 174% more likely to purchase. That probably says it all. So now we've sort of got the customer, through the learn process. They found the product, they put it in their cart, and you think your job is done. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case, because the simple statistic is that about 70% of e-commerce carts are abandoned. So if you want to reduce that, there are a couple of things that you need to go look at beside running abandoned cart campaigns. So in the first instance on your site, we generally talk about one-page checkout where possible. Don't make customers click if you can avoid it. We're again comfortable to fill out, scroll and fill out. Don't force registration. Always use guest checkout, plus the option of saving your details if you want to become a repeat buyer. Cross-sell and upsell are great, but don't overdo it and don't lose the first sale because you're trying to sell them something else. Too many customers or clients try to overdo that, and it's not a good idea. You need to offer multiple payment, and you'll need to be clarity around shipping options, and we'll look at that in more detail. So let's look at the next slide, Al, please. So shipping and payment methods. So in terms of free shipping, Amazon unfortunately has basically conditioned us all to expect free shipping unless you get into some of the more advanced offerings. And you can actually make a margin on selling advanced shipping options. But generally speaking, 85% of the circumstances, people are going to expect to have free shipping. And you just have to make a virtue of it, really. When you think about it, I'm probably happier paying $15 for a t-shirt, with free shipping than buying a $10 t-shirt and then having to pay $5 to ship it. So incorporate it into your price. Don't make yourself uncompetitive, but fund it through there. And then when we look at the reasons people abandon carts, number one, extra cost too high, and that's typically shipping. So it's the number one reason for abandonment. You look at a long and complex process, 24%. Had to create an account, 34%. These are all things that you can avoid in your checkout experience, and thereby help reduce your abandonment rate. Okay, next chart, please. The other one, just very quickly, particularly if you're an international e-com store, you have to offer the right payment option per market, and these are different by every market. And every market has a different top payment method. So Germany, for example, SEPA Direct Debit tends to be very close to the top at about 35%. UK, that's Visa at 55%. The Netherlands have their own national ideal, which is about 60% of the market. If you don't deliver that, then you're impacting your conversion rate. Generally not such a problem these days because we use payment gateways and they offer the top payments per country, but you need to make sure that you're doing that. Okay, can we move to the next slide, please? So we've sort of gone through the three elements of the process, from learning about it, from your product pages to the things you need to focus in your checkout process, if you like, and the things you really need to make sure, the mistakes you don't want to make. As you try to improve your experience, that really should be informed by analytics. And very simply, make sure that all of the e-commerce tracking is on, tag all your URLs so you can see the different impacts of your campaign traffic. You need to build funnels. There's no other way to understand how leaky your process is, and where you need to focus in terms of fixing things. But metrics are important, and averages cover up an awful lot of sins. So we talk about the average conversion rate of an e-com site is about 2.85%. Less than 3% of visitors convert. But that covers a multitude of sins. You need to understand your conversion rate by product category. You need to look at your key pages, their bounces and exits. You know, are people exiting at a point that you don't expect them to, and why? And that's a page to fix. And you need to look at your, return on ad spend for your top products or your categories to get the most efficient, spend in terms of what you're trying to achieve. We do like A/B testing environments, but you can only do that if you've got enough traffic to drive a statistically valid result in a reasonable period of time. And the other thing I would say is, if you're not using email as part of your traffic generation efforts, you're probably missing a big trick. So the message here is be granular with your analytics. Find the problem children in your flow, and they're the ones to prioritize and fix. So finally, one other thing I find in a lot of clients when we're working together is they don't make choices in terms of they want to throw everything at the page, every product, every category, because they don't want to exclude anything. Too much choice can actually be a problem for consumers, and it may actually cause them not to buy anything at all. So you need to prioritize. And another, if you're looking for some bedtime reading about how consumers make decisions and how irrationally we make those decisions sometimes, Predictably Irrational is a great read by Dan Monaghan. So well worth putting it on your bedside locker and dipping into it as you go through this experience. So finally, let's move to the summary chart. So what I would say, if you're moving into this space or you've been at it for a while and you're looking to improve, first thing is you're in the content business, whether you like it or not. Quality content with great clarity is actually key. Customer experience is also extremely important, the entire experience. It needs to be fast, easy, and helpful, and that's what builds trust. Understand your metrics, dive deeper on the average, prioritize the things that they show you that's broken to go fix. And sadly, you're never done. Your site is always a work in progress, and because competition changes, product changes, other competitors will change their prices, you got to stay at this day in, day out. And design is only part of the story. So spend as much time on the entire experience as you do thinking about the actual pages, and make sure that end-to-end experience is good. So Cheryl, that's the content. I'll hand back to you for the Q&A. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, John, for going through all of that. Now, we do have time for Q&A, and we do have questions coming in. But before we do that, I just wanted to let people know and remind you that all of these principles, all these best practices that John talked about, they do have to be looked at in relation to your industry, in relation to your market, in relation to the audience you're working with. And so definitely reach out to the WSI consultant that referred you to this webinar to talk more about your e-commerce strategy or digital marketing in general. They're there to help you. And if you aren't currently working with WSI and you want to start working with a consultant of ours, reach out to contact@wsiworld.com. We'll put you in touch with someone. Okay, so moving on to Q&A. We have questions coming in and lots of great comments on the presentation in general. Maybe just to kick things off, so we talked a lot about website elements of e-commerce, but we know that there's a lot that goes into a successful e-commerce strategy than just the website. And some people are asking questions just around, how do I even get people to my e-commerce website? What are some of those best practices? So maybe you can just share a little bit on what are those traffic generation strategies that you normally work and find work well for your clients?
Yeah, great question, Cheryl. And unfortunately, the idea of build it and they will come, very rarely turns out to be true. You do have to put work into your traffic generation, your demand generation activities. I guess I generally split clients into two sort of groups. One, people who are providing a particular need for which there is a search volume for. And in those cases, we generally find that 60–70% of their traffic, comes from both generic search engine and Google Ads, paid search. Again, that's high intent, as long as it's high intent traffic, well focused, they're the key ones to focus on. And SEO, it's boring to some degree, but it's still such a fundamental campaign and program. You have to focus on it. because if you have to pay for every click that you're getting, it becomes very hard to be economic. The next thing after those two is email. And, we would generally see email generating 20, for really good stores, that can represent 20 to 30% of the overall revenue coming from your email traffic. Still one of the best returning campaigns. I think you see a statistic that says for every $1 you spend on your email campaign, you'll get $38 back. So really good. So there are other audiences, other types of products where, Facebook and social, where you're trying to, stimulate maybe that need. It's a little bit maybe more compulsive or impulsive rather than compulsive. And yeah, that for those clients, Facebook and those brand awareness type tactics, play a very important part. But my go-to generally is paid SEO and email as a starting. Make sure they're working well, and then you can build your traffic out from there with all of the display and awareness type tactics that you would normally use in the upper funnel.
Awesome. Now we have some questions just with regards to technology. I mean, some people are asking about different technologies with regards to, making the experience maybe more personalized, but I know there's even the foundational question of what e-commerce platform should I be using, right? And how can we ensure that the platforms we're using are compliant with GDPR, PCI, all that sort of stuff? And what are normally your recommendations to your clients around technology?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, over the last couple of years, most of the platforms work pretty well for most customers. So the technology has matured, and so there's less of a risk in what you pick. But I guess there's 3 or 4 that sort of stand out depending on where you're coming from, what you're trying to do. I like the SaaS platforms, both BigCommerce and Shopify, for the simple reason that for certainly medium-sized, businesses, etc., and indeed some bigger ones these days, they take away a lot of the maintenance, security, upgrade, all of those sort of complexities. The platform looks after that for you. And then there's a pretty good ecosystem around them in terms of templates, developers, etc., that help you get there. WooCommerce is a very popular, works very well as a WordPress add-on, and for many clients that's good as well. But of course, you will need to think a little bit more about performance, maintenance, and backup in that environment. So they're probably the 3 that we most commonly come across and recommend. You do have Magento. A lot of people are using that, but certainly somebody looking at a platform selection now, I would generally say Shopify or BigCommerce are the 2 that I would look at most often. Maybe WooCommerce, depending on your environment, and we go from there.
Great. And maybe just one more question, because I'm recognizing the time that we have right now. And I know you talked about on cart abandonment with regards to be careful with asking for login, too much sign in at the front, creating accounts, stuff like that, offer guest options. How do you recommend then that, what is your go-to for making sure you collect the necessary information from people as they're going through the process if you're not, getting them to set up all that stuff with you?
Yeah, I mean, you do have to, obviously, if you're going to do an email cart abandonment, you have to have an email to work with, right? And if you look at the platforms, again, they will have some basic email cart abandonment programs, as add-ons, to the platform already. But then equally, there are a number of other platforms like ActiveCampaign, Klaviyo, and the whole variety actually of marketing automation programs that generally have really good connections into the e-commerce store to actually go build those email cart abandonment programs. Again, you have to be a little bit careful. Generally, 2 to 3 emails is enough. Don't annoy your customer, particularly if they've left you for a reason. So don't overdo it. But certainly, if you haven't put in a cart abandonment program, you're probably missing a significant trick in your e-commerce environment.
Awesome. So just to kind of wrap up, before we kind of say thanks to everyone, I just wanted to let you know, we actually got a question because someone was asking, where do I learn more about this topic, digital marketing, other resources? Actually, just so you guys know, John authored a 3-part blog series on our WSI World blog around moving online around this topic. So definitely check that out. But we also have just published our third book, Digital Minds, a strategic approach to connecting and engaging with your customers online. It's available on Amazon. It goes through a number of different things with regards to digital marketing. It's a great read if you just want to get up to speed on all the tactics that should be part of a comprehensive strategy. But, you know, great session today, John. You shared a lot of great information, a lot of key takeaways. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your e-commerce expertise with everyone. And for those on the call, thanks for joining us live. We are going to have a survey that pops up at the end. Please give us feedback. We'd love to get your thoughts on just how you felt about this presentation today, but also what other topics. We continue to be rolling out client webinars to our network here to keep you educated. We'd love to know what you're looking to learn more about. So thanks to everyone for attending. We hope to see you on a next open forum. And thanks again, John, for sharing your expertise.
And thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the day.
Great. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.